Grab coffee, kick up your feet. What time is it? It's time for Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I am Jason Fitz. Feels like it's just going to be a good day. It just feels like we got breaking news. We got a lot to get to. We got division previews. It's stacked as always. Caroline, we will start like we do every single day with 3 points. What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, it is always a good day on Yahoo Sports Daily. In the latest news, well, Shohei Ohtani went yard last night, but that's not really new news. I mean, Shohei Ohtani always does that, and that's not the biggest story as far as even Shohei Ohtani is concerned. Because Shohei Ohtani, it was reported yesterday that he and his agent are being sued for more than $240 million by a Hawaii real estate investor and broker who were fired from a luxury housing development that Shohei Ohtani invested into and was going to be a spokesperson for. So stay with us here because there's a lot of elements and a lot of layers to this story. So Shohei Ohtani bought a $17 million home, which can't wait until I can do that someday. You know, a girl can dream, on the Hapuna Coast in Hawaii in April of 2024. It's a $240 million luxury apartment and condo development that reached out to Shohei several years ago about being the spokesperson and being the face for this luxury development. Now, according to the lawsuit, the Dodgers star and his agent are accused of, quote, tortious interference and unjust enrichment. So that's just legal jargon, essentially, for breaking contract because Shohei and his agent allegedly were trying to push out the broker and the investor and make all of these concessions, make so many concessions, in fact, that the broker and investor both got fired from this deal. So the broker and investor are suing Shohei and his agent for being pushed out of the deal. You know, this isn't the first time that we've had a multi-million-dollar lawsuit with Shohei Ohtani. It was really just one calendar year ago that we had the gambling scandal between Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter that allegedly, and now Shohei Ohtani's interpreter is in prison for taking $16 million of Shohei Ohtani's money and gambling with it. Now, is it just Shohei Ohtani's bad luck that he is so invested in baseball that he can't vet the people around him enough and he's just surrounded by bad people that are taking advantage of his money? Or is it Shohei Ohtani himself getting into bad business? Look, we don't know very much about Shohei Ohtani, so we don't know how this scandal will turn out, but the second one in really just over a year, Fitz, not a great look for the Dodgers star. But don't worry, Dodgers are still atop your division.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the Dodgers will always get attention, and so will Shohei. But you're right. It's curious to have two controversies at this level this quickly together. We'll keep you updated on all of that. I'll give you my first point. You talked about money. Well, today, James Cook has got a lot of it. When a hold-in goes right, that's what we have here. As you see Rap Sheets report there, the Bills have agreed to terms on a big new contract. How big? 4 years, $48 million with $30 million guaranteed. Remember when we said running backs wouldn't get paid anymore? 4 years, $48 million for James Cook, which makes a ton of sense because of the window that the Bills are in right now. Let's be clear. The Buffalo Bills every year, they're as tired of answering the question of how you get through the Chiefs as we are of asking it. But realistically, there isn't any one answer. What you have is a star running back in James Cook, but you also have a bit of a backfield share situation. So was it going to be a situation they were happy to pay for? Well, the answer to that clearly was yes. We told you yesterday on Yahoo Sports Daily that James Cook had returned to the field, and we had to wonder if that meant that a contract was done. Now we get the final answer to that. 4 years, $48 million, $30 million guaranteed isn't just done. It's a statement. It's a statement that the Bills understand that right now they don't need to worry about dollars. They need to worry about Lombardis. And the only way they're going to get that Lombardi is if they get the best production out of everybody they can, which includes James Cook. So as I always say, lay out those coins and roll around in the bed today a quarters like you're Scrooge McDuck, my friend. You just got the bag and you earned every penny of it. Congratulations to James Cook. All right, Caroline, that brings us to our big point of the day, our number one point of the day. And it's really Travis Kelce's beautiful. Okay, that's not the only point, but I mean, we're all reminded.
We've been knowing that, Fitz. I mean, we knew that.
The glow up of Travis Kelce, by the way. I mean, Travis Kelce was famous. He was fine. Like walk into a bar, people know him. But then all of a sudden, he wasn't
that good looking.
He wasn't GQ. Like you look at those, like
it's
the glow
Taylor
up
Swift effect.
Exactly. Like Taylor Swift going on his podcast. We talked about that. You look at the cover shoot for GQ. He's out there on whatever the hell that is, looking good. I mean, just out there spinning. The hat, I could never wear the hat. We're going to get to the Chiefs on this, but the hat's a
Can
daring
we talk
choice.
about like the fur hat in an environment where there are alligators? Like something doesn't really add up there.
It's GQ. They do weird fashion things. I mean, again, another with
true.
what is this one? Fur hat sitting on the side of a truck. I just now he's just a wild wildebeest just standing on a boat.
The weather is ambiguous. You're wearing a fur coat in the middle of the swamp. Is it hot? Is it cold? I need to know, Travis. Yeah, he looks fabulous. Did GQ not think that we were going to question that? But I mean, my goodness.
This picture right here, though. This picture right here of Travis Kelce. I just need the guys to pull this up because this picture is wildly reminiscent, going back to my 80s and 90s wrestling love, of one Razor Ramon. Okay, famous wrestler from an era ago. But that, I mean, when you side by side those two, like there's just an element. You can't tell me GQ didn't know what they were doing there, Caroline.
And look, to be fair, I did not know who Razor Ramon was before you brought him up. I did have to Google him. I do apologize. But our wonderful producer, Mike Goldfarb, put this side by side in our rundown, peek behind the curtain. And I was just scrolling quickly through the rundown, familiarizing myself with it, making sure all of my T's were crossed and I's were dotted. I scrolled past this side by side and I didn't even bat an eye because I just assumed it was two pictures of Travis Kelce.
Razor Ramon famously always had the little toothpick. I wish I had a little toothpick. I just chew on it the rest of the show in his honor. All of this conversation, we're not here just to talk about how dashingly good-looking Travis Kelce is, although we could. It leads us into an opportunity to talk about the AFC West because, Caroline, if you just look at star power, not from a GQ standpoint, but from a sideline standpoint, it's hard to argue that there's a better division from coach name recognition than the AFC West. And this year's division particularly looks like a gauntlet. So you have the Chiefs here. And I don't know. I think we are actually, I cannot believe I'm going to say this phrase, especially as a Raiders fan. I think we are just sleeping on how stinking good the Chiefs are going to be this year because they're that good every year. And it feels like people are bored with it. And they lost the Super Bowl last year. So now everybody wants to move on. Caroline, I'm not ready to move on from the Chiefs, who I think are still clearly the class of the AFC West.
It's hard to argue against it, right? And why would you? The Chiefs lost in the Super Bowl. Now, all of a sudden, they're just a bunch of jabronis. Hat tip to Travis Kelce there. And I don't subscribe to that belief. I don't believe that one, bad game in the Super Bowl against an absolutely stacked Eagles team means that all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes, who is the best quarterback in the National Football League, and this entire stacked roster, and Andy Reid, who's one of the best offensive coaches in the game of football, now all of a sudden is just yesterday's news. So I'm 1000% with you. And I think that this version of the Chiefs coming off of what was flat out, let's just say it, an embarrassment in the Super Bowl is going to fuel this team like crazy. We haven't seen a team in the middle of a dynastic run lose as badly as the Chiefs did on as big of a stage as the Super Bowl really ever. We never saw a Tom Brady team get obliterated the way that the Chiefs did in a Super Bowl. Sure, they lost Super Bowls, but it was never by that margin. We never saw the Golden State Warriors lose in the postseason as badly as we saw the Chiefs lose to the Eagles. So this kind of feels like an unprecedented comeback for a team that is still very much so in the middle of a dynasty. I mean, the opportunity to win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, which is squarely in front of the Kansas City Chiefs, is very much so in the middle of a dynasty. So I think that this team, the way that they will be fueled, the way that they will want to kind of come back with a vengeance, I don't think that can be overstated, how dangerous this Chiefs team can be with a different mentality, and on top of just how much talent this team has, and the fact that you have Patrick freaking Mahomes as your quarterback. In Patrick Mahomes, we trust.
Yeah, so Rashee Rice is their main weapon, and look, we still don't know how long his suspension is going to be for his legal issues. Albert Breer said he thought it might end up being 5 or 6 games, so we are looking at suspension issues that will cost the Chiefs a little bit at the beginning of the season, to which I say, who cares? Like, when is the last time there was a mountain that the Chiefs were incapable of climbing? And what becomes so frustrating for so many of us is that you look at it and say, well, last year the offense didn't particularly look right for much of the season. Okay. All that did was get them to 15 wins over the course of the year, 15 wins, and it could have been 16 because they sat everybody in the last game. Like, you're talking about a team that was the number one seed in the AFC. You're talking about a team that went to the Super Bowl, and we talk about them like they're broken. And then what everybody says is, well, that luck can't continue. What happened last year, these one-score miracle wins can't continue. Well, at some point, it's not luck, it's identity. And I just, the only way, we've talked so much about Patrick Mahomes' record in one-score games. It is astronomical. So the only way you beat Patrick Mahomes consistently, that you can bank on beating the Chiefs, is if you blow them out. My question is, how are you blowing out Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, who happens to be one of, if not the best in the league as well? So part of this is, it's not just Mahomes. It's the holy triumvirate of all three. It's Andy Reid, Spags, Mahomes together. And I look at all of that and say, yeah, the offensive line got trucked last year in the Super Bowl to Philadelphia. Just a few months ago, the offensive line got absolutely trucked. So if you are one of the teams in the AFC, and you feel like you have a defensive line that is on par with what Philly had in the Super Bowl last year, and also a wide receiver room that's on par with what Philly had last year, and also an offensive line that's on par with what Philly had last year. Oh, and a quarterback at Jalen Hurts that can execute the tush push constantly. If you have all of those elements week in and week out, yeah, maybe the Chiefs will fall. But to me, Caroline, I don't see anybody that has all of those things stacking together. I see the Chiefs still running through the AFC.
When you are at the top, anything less than perfection will get picked apart and prodded apart and be under a magnifying glass. So when the Chiefs are anything less than absolutely perfect, we point at that and say, oh, not the same old Chiefs. We do the same thing with Nick Saban coached Alabama teams. That when they blow out Mercer 48-0 instead of 55-0, all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, have they lost a step? You are held to the standard of excellence, which might be a little bit unfair, but oops, sorry, that's what life at the top of the NFL is like. I mean, Patrick Mahomes even talked about it this past season, of the pressure of three-peating and how hard it is to be under the microscope of the media, potentially winning their third straight Super Bowl. Cry me a freaking river, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, my goodness, I think any quarterback, any team, any coach, any fan base in America would be killing to have the spotlight of potentially three-peating in the Super Bowl. But that's exactly how we're kind of talking about the Chiefs. That the offensive line wasn't good enough to win a third consecutive Super Bowl. Obviously, that's something that they acknowledged and said, look, we're going to go out there and use our first round pick on Josh Simmons, an offensive lineman out of Ohio State. So yes, 100%. Maybe we don't have enough nuance, and maybe we hold the Chiefs to a different standard when we have this conversation about the Chiefs. But welcome to life in the NFL.
I will just remind everybody that Patrick Mahomes has gone to at least the AFC Championship game in every year of his career as a starter. So, I just don't. You know me, I love proof of concept. I think that's pretty good proof of concept. So what about the rest of the West? And we're going to get into all four teams throughout the course of the day. I'll do my best to remain unbiased when we get to my beloved Raiders. But there are other teams in this division that have taken a step forward and are looking to become one of those great contenders. And one was Denver, right? Because the Broncos last year, I expected Sean Payton would need a bit of a moment. Like, it would take you're going to come in, you're going to strip it down to the studs, like redoing a house, right? You're just going to strip it all the way down, rebuild it from scratch. I expected Bo Nix to have some learning pains, all of these things. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong about the Broncos last year. They were so far ahead of schedule for where I thought they would be. The fact that they got that level of play from Bo Nix, who I think was very good, and then, frankly, they trotted out the best defense in the league week in and week out. Like, the Broncos weren't just good. The Broncos were stunningly good to me, and they're so far ahead of schedule. I've got to look at Denver right now and say, man, if I'm a Broncos fan, I feel pretty good that my team can make it a challenge for the Chiefs.
Yeah, we'll get into a full, more in-depth AFC West preview, but a little peek behind the curtain of where I'm at with this division. I'm taking the Broncos to be the second best team in this division, and frankly, I don't really know how close it is between the Broncos and the Chargers. Chargers, prove me wrong. But the Broncos had one of the best defenses in the NFL this past year. You have the reigning defensive player of the year. You see him right there in Pat Surtain. And I'm with you on Bo Nix. When the Broncos picked Bo Nix, I thought, these idiots. And of course, I'm a jaded New Orleans Saints fan that didn't want great things for Sean Payton. But shocker, Sean Payton knows more about quarterbacks than Caroline Fenton does. Color me shocked. because what Bo Nix did this past season, I think, blew my expectations out of the water, because I think I was more, caught up with who Bo Nix was at Auburn, who didn't take care of the football, who was not just fell short of expectations essentially. And then he goes to Oregon, and all he needed really was a fresh start. He looked like a completely different quarterback in his last couple of years in college football than he did in his first couple of years. And then he goes to the Sean Payton camp of quarterback rehabilitation, and all of a sudden Bo Nix very much so looks like he deserves to be one of the 32 starters in the National Football League. So this defense, combined with what Bo Nix can be under the tutelage of Sean Payton in year 2, and an improved run game, I think absolutely the Broncos can be one of those teams that we're not talking enough about in the AFC. Obviously, we're talking about the Chiefs. Obviously, we're talking about the Ravens. Obviously, we're talking about the Bills. Obviously, we're talking about what can the Bengals be with hopefully a rehabilitized defense under Joe Burrow. We're not talking enough about the Denver Broncos. And of course, it's the Chiefs' AFC West to lose, but I think we do need to be paying more attention to the Broncos, that if they can take one of two against the Chiefs in the regular season, why not? Why not the Broncos?
So there are some advanced analytics on Bo Nix that I think are important here. He averaged 5.7 yards per attempt and had 5 passing touchdowns in his first 7 games. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's protected. That's the best way to say that. That went up to 7.4 yards per attempt and 24 passing touchdowns in the last 10 games of the season. That just shows you. And by the way, he was 6th in pass attempts. He was 6th in completions. Like, he was 5th amongst quarterbacks in carries. What does that tell you? It tells you that over the course of the year, they didn't protect Bo Nix in a way where they weren't willing to let him go out and cook, right? Like, there is an element here of Sean Payton took time, much like we saw Cliff Kingsbury with Jaden Daniels. Sean Payton certainly took time on letting Bo push the ball down the field and letting Bo get more aggressive. But seeing that growth throughout the course of the season tells you how much faith the organization had in his ability throughout the course of the year to be who he is. And you're right. Like, I questioned, if you look back at those road home splits in college, Bo Nix was a different quarterback on the road than he was at home, and I could never get a good answer why. I even asked Bo Nix in multiple interviews to explain it and could never get a good read on why. And I thought for sure when he got to the pros, that would come back to haunt him, that there would be some element of you can't be that inconsistent. Well, guess what? Turns out he just figured it out. Like, it helps that he played a lot of college football. It helps that he's a smart kid that came in already a grown adult ready to play the game. It helps that he clicked with Sean Payton. But it answered the question that the Broncos desperately needed to answer. So now when you stack all of that with a defense that is as good as theirs is, I'm not willing. I gotta make people hang on a little bit, Caroline. I'm not willing to hand second place to the Broncos necessarily until we break down the Chargers, which by the way, we will do in just a little bit. Chargers and Raiders will come later in the show. We'll make our official predictions, but I'm with you. I would be stunned right now if the Denver Broncos weren't a playoff team next year, this year coming in. I would be absolutely stunned if they aren't a playoff team. We'll continue to break down the AFC West. We'll get you predictions on great players, great teams. Got a lot of news to get to, but coming up, Greg Olsen, the great Greg Olsen, going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on the league this year and some incredible youth sports movement that he's involved with. That's coming up next on Yahoo Sports Daily.
I coach my son's middle school team here in Charlotte. It's me and my dad, who was my high school coach, Luke Kuechly, Jonathan Stewart, Todd Blackledge, former quarterback, Penn State. Last year, Tom was nice enough to film a selfie video to get the kids before we kicked off the season, like a, hey man, let's go, you've put the work. When I surprised the kids and put that on in the classroom before we took the field, it was like, like in Braveheart when like he gives that big speech and then like everyone just runs across the battlefield and like takes axes in the face. We could have run the kids out of the room. When they saw your face on the TV delivering that message, I wish we like turned the camera around and filmed them because it was a special moment.
That's just a small clip of a big thing. Youth Inc. officially launches Tuesday, August 12th, a content and commerce platform built for youth sports families, coaches, and teams. The great Greg Olsen you just saw there joining us now talking about that. A lot to get into you with my brother, but I've talked to you about this before. I see that clip of you talking to Tom, and we all know that you were in that spot, and we know how much you want to be that number one. How weird is it for you to be talking to somebody where you guys both have similar career trajectories and roles that you're looking for in broadcasting?
It's really not weird at all. Tom and I have gotten to know each other over the last 12 or so months and have actually gotten to have a really nice personal relationship. We knew each other as players, but just on the field before and after games saying hello. But it wasn't really until Tom joined Fox that we really got to know each other more on a personal level. And I've just really enjoyed being around him, spending some time with him. Was out at the Fox seminar earlier this week out in California and got to hang and catch up. So, it's not weird at all. I'm just appreciative. A guy like him to take time to come speak to our audience about maybe something that, everyone's always asking him about, NFL and winning Super Bowls and all that. I want to ask him what it was like growing up with sisters. I want to know what it was like driving home after a bad game with his dad and what it was like dealing with adversity and failure. What has made Tom Brady what we know? Give us a little sense. What are those lessons that we can pay to our younger athletes and to our children? And that's really what you think is finding these really interesting people that have really great journeys in the sports world, but how do we pull out some nuggets that pertain to the youth sports journey and the age appropriate stuff? So Tom's our kickoff. We got Malcolm Gladwell and Ryan Day, CJ Stroud, author James Clear, the author. I mean, we got some really cool guests coming down the line with You Think, and we're really excited about it.
Drive home with dad after a bad game just brought me the worst flashbacks of chills down my spine. But one thing that Tom talks a lot about is the development of the quarterback position at the NFL level. Obviously, you're here with Youth Inc. You work a lot with youth sports. We're seeing young athletes specialize in their respective sports earlier than ever. There's a trickle-up effect into the NFL that everybody wants their quarterback, their first-round quarterback to start day one. We're seeing it with Shedeur Sanders' mania in Cleveland. He has 3 great quarters in the preseason. Now, all of a sudden, Browns fans are slamming on the table for Shedeur to start week 1. Are we developing football players and quarterbacks correctly?
Well, I think it's a great question. I actually saw Tom on Joel Klatt, another colleague of ours. I actually saw Tom talk about a very similar thing regarding to quarterbacks. So I think it's such a great question. And I guess my answer would be very similar to what he had talked about. I think we better than ever and more so than ever, especially at the youth landscape, high school, middle school, high school, even college. I think people are exposed to quarterback training and skill development and mental, speed coaches and performance coaches more than they ever have at the younger level. I mean, there's middle school kids and high school kids. They got 4 private coaches for whatever sport and whatever skill that they're trying to learn. I think we overdo it in that regard. I think we're so worried about early skill and winning and what team are we on and what showcase can we go to. I don't think we do a great job at the youth level overall teaching all the mental and the emotional aspects, right? What does it mean to compete? What does it mean to deal with adversity, being tough? How about the idea of being committed to one team, right? Like actually being a member of a team and not just feel like you're going to bounce around to the highest bidder each and every week. That's happening not just in NIL in the college world. That's happening in 12-year-old baseball. That's happening in girls volleyball. Like we are creating that kind of, I call them, they're like mercenaries, where it's just whoever you want to play for on any given week, and we'll just throw the best team together because the goal is to win. And it's just a very different approach that we take. Like we want the kids. I just raced here to talk to you guys from our middle school football practice, for 4.5 hours with 7th and 8th grade boys. And yes, we're teaching them how to throw and catch and tackle and step with the correct foot, but we're teaching them how to be tough, and we're teaching them And that doesn't mean bashing their heads against each other. I mean with working through things when you're tired. I mean getting up at 7 a.m. when we had practice the night before and you don't feel like going, being able to be coached, being part of a team. All right, you're not going to get the ball on this play. Are you going to give great effort on the backside? Those are the things that matter to me. And I think so often we ignore them because we just want to coach the kid who throws it the furthest, coach the kid who runs the fastest, coach the kid who hits it the best. But we're not developing like all the other intangibles that come with playing high level sports. And I see guys now coming to the NFL where all of those things really matter because everybody's talented. And I don't know if guys are coming in with the same mental preparation and toughness and mental toughness that they were years ago. I think there's a little bit of a void in the chain.
Yeah, and kind of looking at the next level, at the NFL level, some of these players are rushed because these players are now celebrities. And it feels like there's no bigger celebrity in football. There's not more conversation happening about any other player than Shedeur Sanders. So from a broadcaster perspective, how do you approach covering someone who is as polarizing as a player like Shedeur?
Yeah, I think you just cover them for what they are on the field. I don't think it's any of our listen, every coach, I think evaluating a player as the head coach is very different than evaluating the player as the color commentator during the game, right? How Shedeur Sanders is on a Tuesday meeting or that's not I don't know. I'm not in the meetings. I think it's very hard for me to pass judgment, and this is not unique to Shedeur, but we want to do this to all young coaches, young quarterbacks. We did it last year to Caleb Williams. How much was he studying film? How much of that was Eberflus and the system? And we have these same conversations about every young quarterback every single year. And I think really the only people that have the insight into being fair in their evaluations are the people in the building, and that's the coaches and the players. But I think to your point, and it's a good one, the idea of having to coach players to like the level of their celebrity, I think that's where coaches have to do a good job in just realizing that none of that matters, right? Even though your fan base is clamoring for a player because he was a famous player in college or because he won certain awards or whatever it was, only you know if that player is ready to play at the NFL level. And sometimes you got to make hard decisions. Sometimes you need to do things that might be against the grain. But at the end of the day, it's up to Kevin Stefanski about whether or not Shedeur Sanders is ready to play or not. And regardless of how good he was in college, regardless of how famous he is or popular, it comes down to whether you can play NFL quarterback. And I thought the other night he looked really good. I thought he looked poised. I thought he looked calm. I thought he looked in complete control. But that was step one. I think we have a very everyone is very quick to swing the pendulum back and forth. He had no place in the NFL, and now he's going to be a Pro Bowler. There's no such thing as nuance anymore. But that's the job of the coach. The media is always going to kind of swing to the extremes, but the coach and the organization has to make sure they stay level-headed. They don't rush that development process. So when he does get on the field, whenever that is, he's in a position for success.
You talk about level-headed and nuance. So I think your perspective is so interesting from a player now in front of the mic. How much, when we talk about things like distractions, because especially with the Cowboys, Parsons, all the money talk going on, if you're in that locker room, how much does any of that actually seep into you and how you do business and what happens for you and your team?
Well, I think we see it every preseason. There's at least one or two examples, and this is not unique. This is not new to Micah Parsons or, James Cook, who's kind of holding in, and then yesterday with Cam Hayward and the hold ins. Like this is not new. This has been going on for 20 years, where people want to get new contracts and they only have a certain amount of ways that they can force their leverage and force their hand. I just don't know many examples where it's ever worked out great. I don't know if there's an example of a guy holding out of all of training camp and then getting to the first game and having a great season, right? You don't ever want to jinx anyone, but it just seems like guys just aren't physically ready. They haven't done the reps. There's been distractions. So for that individual player, it just feels like more often than not. And I'm never going to knock a guy for trying to get paid. Micah's obviously one of the best players in the whole league, offense or defense, but very rarely does it ever work out in their best interest as far as on the field. They might get the contract they want, but are you going to continue to play at that level? Time will tell. But for the teams, it's real. You can fight it all you want and you can try to block it out all you want. Guys are talking about it. They're being asked about it in the locker room. It's dominating every conversation internally and externally. And the best teams handle their business in advance to prevent these exact distractions. And there's some things in the NFL that you can't prevent. There's going to be fires you have to put out throughout the course of the season. The best teams just don't create their own problems. They don't, you have your best player in the league, get them signed a year ago. Like what is the idea of waiting and letting things drag on? It's just, I don't think it's good business, but I also don't run NFL teams. But I'm going to be very curious to see how a lot of these hold in, hold outs, disgruntled players, I think at the end, midway through the season, I think we take a look back and say, how's that individual season started? How has that team started? Because more often than not, there are some side effects to these sort of contractual issues during training camp.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. Obviously, the distraction in the locker room and the conversation around the team, but how does that impact week one? Okay, Micah Parsons has been out for a majority of training camp. He's quote unquote holding in. He's not getting those practice reps. He's not the only one. Trey Hendrickson, Terry McLaurin, so on and so forth. They're not getting those valuable practice preseason reps. Do we make too much of that, or is that actually something that can come to fruition in a negative way once the season comes around?
For 99% of NFL players, the reps matter. The reps absolutely matter. Training camp matters. It's the only way to get your body built up. It's the only way to build up some sort of, we talk so much about the young kids, like building that physical and emotional and mental edge. It's no different when you're a 25-year-old all-pro. Like there is a process of acclimating yourself to play high-level competitive NFL football. Like you can train all off season, you can do all the lifting and the running, but you have to play the sport to get your body prepared to continue to play the sport. There's really no other way. And for 99% of the guys, those reps are valuable. And for 99% of those guys to the team, they bring such value. Are there the one-offs? Could Micah Parsons go in week one and have 3 sacks? Yes. Could he be the exception to the rule? Sure. He's that special. He is that, but it is much more of the outlier than it is what applies to most NFL players, which is you need to get your time in. You need to build up your callousness of your body, both mentally and physically, for the rigors of an NFL season. And if you want to have success, you've got to get those live reps, whether it's rushing the passer with your other teammates, whether it's a receiver getting on time with your quarterback, whatever that position you play, there is an element of doing it within the confines of your system on the field with 21 other players at the same time alongside of you. And the only way to do that is to be on the field in practice and in the games. You can't recreate that in any other form or fashion. So could Micah get away with it and have a great season? Yes, I wouldn't put anything by him. He's a very special physical player. But I would not try to make a career out of it if I was most NFL players.
All right, real quick before we get you out of here, got to pin you in. Better chance at the playoffs this year. University of Miami, a team you know well, or the Carolina Panthers, a team you know well?
That's a great question. I'm going to go with Miami. I really like what Dave Canales and the direction of the Panthers. The way Bryce finished last year, they've really done a nice job beefing up some of the defensive front stuff. They struggled up front last year. Offensive line's come a long way in the last 2 years. Great job by Dan Morgan in the front office there. He's got tons of weapons on offense. So I think this is going to be a much improved Carolina Panthers team. I just think the job Mario Cristobal and Miami, they're just a little bit further along in this rebuild, so to speak, if you will. So I think last year, obviously Cam Ward made a huge impact. Can Carson Beck be that? Time will tell. But I think this might be a better team. Separate the quarterback. We'll let that determine how that plays out because it's hard to expect someone to be as good as Cam was last year. But all the other positions, I think the thought both inside that building and outside down in Miami is that this version is a better overall team than last year's. And last year's, they're a meltdown at the end of the season from being in the ACC championship with a potential trip to the playoffs. So I think Miami's closer, but I think Carolina's on their way.
Youth Inc. has officially launched. It is out there, content and commerce platform built for youth, sports, families, coaches, and teams. Check it out. We've got all the links for you here. As always, Greg, man, appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
The field next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Oh, yeah. What now? Coach Prime on Twitter voicing his pleasure in Shedeur balling out Friday night. Caroline was in the building, obviously. It was a big night for the Sanders family. A lot of joy, but that joy didn't translate necessarily to Coach Prime's usual day job when the AP poll came out, because as good as the weekend was for Shedeur, Coach has got to be looking around saying, what in the hell is going on? Because Colorado, not even ranked. And that has me thinking, Caroline, maybe it's time to play a game. Like, good team, good story. We're talking about teams right now. These are the stories about teams that we're only going to be talking about in August, because once they get on the field, it's going to quickly fizzle. So where are you on Colorado?
I think right now it's a good story. That we all kind of fell in love with Colorado and have fallen in love with Colorado over the past couple of years. And if you didn't fall in love, you fell in a different kind of feeling. But either way, everybody feels some type of way about Colorado. And we heard about Deion Sanders' cancer diagnosis over this past offseason, how it's given him such a different perspective and kind of a renewed lease on life. And that story is so empowering and so impactful and just powerful. And that's probably a message that's going to trickle down to his entire locker room. So that in and of itself is a fantastic story. This entire Colorado team and now this entire Colorado franchise being coached by Deion Sanders is always going to be a good story. I don't think they're going to be a great team. And look, that's okay. You just lost your starting quarterback who had one of the best completion percentages in all of college football this past year. You lose Travis Hunter, the Heisman Trophy winner, and you don't just lose one player in Travis Hunter, you lose two positions. You lose an elite wide receiver and you lose an elite corner. Quarterback, wide receiver, corner, all at elite levels. That's not easy to replace. Now, it's not to say that Deion Sanders can't coach up the rest of this team. That's not to say they didn't do a whole lot of work in the transfer portal this past offseason. It's just a lot of that you're losing. You don't have a lot of continuity from this past offseason. Or from this past season, excuse me. The offensive line needed a major overhaul. I don't know if they did enough in this past offseason to make the offensive line what it needed to be. I don't see the run game being upgraded enough to accommodate for losing Shedeur. So I think more so good story than it is good team, but that's okay. Any team that loses as much production as Colorado did from one season to the next is going to inevitably take a step back, especially in a Big 12 that is stacked and loaded. I mean, you look at Utah, you look at Kansas State, you look at Arizona State, you look at BYU. It could be anyone's Big 12. It's just a little bit too deep for Colorado to be able to compete, in my opinion.
I do say keep an eye on Juju Lewis. I've spent a little time with him on some of our work with Rivals and On 3. I've spent a little time with Juju, the freshman quarterback there. I'm excited to see that kid play. There's no doubt about it. But you're right. Yeah. This is a better story than it is a football team. And frankly, I just want to clearly, loudly say, when Colorado is good, it's great. Like, I love late night. We're sitting up and we're waiting for Colorado to play. Like, that is what is great as somebody that loves to watch college football from noon until 2 a.m. So I want Colorado to be great. And I want Deion to get this moment, particularly after the way that he handled everything with this diagnosis and the way that he's handled his platform. It's truly beautiful. I'm rooting for Deion. I'm rooting for Colorado. I just think you're right. It's a better story than it is a football team. Let's continue the story process and talk about, I don't know, some guy maybe you've heard of, Bill Belichick. Apparently he's a college football coach. Belichick is out here with North Carolina.
Wow.
Who knew? I feel like we've spent so much time talking about his girlfriend that we've forgotten to talk about the actual football team here, Caroline. And like, this is all part of why, again, I think this is a way better story than it is a football team. And the hard part about this is that, look, I think anytime you come into college football, no matter what you put in your staff and no matter how much you say, hey, we've brought people in that understand the game, college is just going to be a different vibe than the NFL in a lot of ways. And it's going to take a second to get your footing in what that means. And look, I think Belichick and North Carolina have a chance to be good. The problem is they're going to be propped up on television every single week in a way that makes you think they're going to be epic, and they aren't. Like, when you look at the ACC right now, there is a clear line between where the best of the ACC is and where North Carolina is. Like, North Carolina boosters are paying a lot of money and they expect immediate results. They'll get those results, Caroline, but I don't think that North Carolina is anywhere near a playoff team this year, which is what people are going to expect when they hear the name Belichick with college football. So as good as he is as a coach, and as much as I want North Carolina to go out and crush it, I just don't think the pieces are there right now.
I also wonder how successful Bill can be in today's college football. We saw what Bill looked like as a coach in the NFL when Tom Brady wasn't his quarterback anymore, and it was pretty brutal. I mean, today's college football and how much things have changed, and the players are now getting paid, and the players now stick around longer, and the players now feel so much more empowered to stand up for themselves and have a voice, which I will say unequivocally is a positive thing. I don't know if Bill's Patriot way, where there is no fun in football and the fun is in the winning, really works. And look, UNC has 9 new starters on defense. Their starting quarterback, Max Johnson, didn't play for basically the entire year last year. He's coming off of a really brutal leg injury. Just don't think this roster is equipped to compete. I don't care how many Super Bowls Bill Belichick has won, but obviously a fascinating story. And I look at UNC, I look at Colorado. They're all August teams, in my opinion. They're not October teams. This team, UCLA, they were an April team, not an August team. And it's because of who they brought in. Nico Iamaleava was the talk of the offseason. Has kind of become the poster child for this new era of NIL. Nico Iamaleava, formerly at Tennessee, he knocked on Josh Heupel's door and said, I want more money. And Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers boosters and their collective said, nope, we're not giving you more money. And in fact, you're kicked off the team for even asking that. So Nico transfers to UCLA. He's from LA. And he said so many times, hey, I'm going to UCLA because of their offense. Really? An offense that was below the middle of the pack in college football last year, an offense that was 132nd in running the football. That's 132nd of 133 fits for those who are taking notes at home. So I think that Nico coming to UCLA, obviously their pass game will be improved because Nico Iamaleava is a better passer than any quarterback that UCLA has had over the last decade. I still think that it's more so a story and probably a testament to this NIL era more than UCLA is going to be a contender in a stacked Big Ten. This is Ohio State's Big Ten, Michigan's Big Ten, Penn State's Big Ten. This is not UCLA's Big Ten.
I'm old enough to remember when UCLA football mattered. And like I'm saying that with all of the dripping shade that comes off of me as I say it. Like I'm old enough to remember when UCLA USC was the sort of game that people actually flocked to watch. And now this year, there's a better chance that UCLA USC is just 2 bad football teams that nobody cares about by the time they play than it's a meaningful football game to anybody in the college football lexicon with the playoff ramifications. Like it is stunning to me sometimes to think about how the mighty have fallen, especially when you think about NIL and you think about recruiting advantages on the West Coast that you can have in places like California, the talent that is out there at the high school level, the ability should be there. And it's not. And it's a shame. Like one of the things that we acknowledged when we saw the Big Ten blow up in its size was, hey, there are going to be programs that have to sort of become comfortable with being a new level of Big Ten irrelevance. And I never thought UCLA would be there, but man, worse than bad, UCLA football right now is actually irrelevant. Let me give you another one, August story maybe, but we got a little trickle feel good left on this, okay? Because sometimes we like to take feel good from last year and make it feel good to this year. And I want to feel good about Indiana football. I do, Caroline. Like I want to make Indiana football a great August story that's going to be a great October story. I do, but I can't. Like,
Voice got really high there.
I mean, do any of us really believe that this is sustainable? Like Indiana was a really cool story last year and they beat up on a bunch of bad football teams. Look, the thing's going to come to a crashing halt against Penn State this year when they play Penn State late in the year, but they also have Illinois on the schedule, which right now Illinois looks like they're going to be a pretty darn good football team. I like the idea of Indiana becoming a new juggernaut, but I think it's a lot more like when we watch the NCAA tournament and you watch a basketball team go on a really special run. Sometimes we just have to accept that it's a really special run, and that's what Indiana had last year, was a special run that at times we questioned the validity of because of the level of opponent they faced. They're going to take on Oregon this year. Don't like that matchup for them. They're going to take on Penn State. Don't like that matchup for them. I think Michigan State's going to be a little bit better. I think Wisconsin's going to be a little bit better. Indiana feels like they're no longer the laughing stock of the Big Ten, but the concept of Indiana being a big story, let's say by Thanksgiving, I'm not buying it.
And Kurt Signetti has the audacity to get up in front of media, Big Ten media days, and say, hey, I believe they took Virginia off their schedule. They said, hey, we're adopting an SEC schedule. We're not playing any non-conference Power 4 teams, which is just so laughable because Indiana was truly the beneficiary of a soft as baby poop schedule last year. You're scared of Virginia? You think you're this big bad Indiana team coming off of the college football playoff and you're scared of Virginia? Give me a break.
Yeah, look, we got a lot of love we'll share as we get closer to college football for some teams, but I think there's a theme so far in our first week of Yahoo Sports Daily. I have trust issues with basically all of college football this year. I was stressed to the world watching for the first time. I don't have a favorite college football team. I just love chaos. That's why I love covering the sport. I think this year I'm going to get more chaos than I can handle. Okay, every year we say the same thing.
2007 is loading, Fitz. 2007.
Let's go.
The greatest year in the history of college football. We're here for it.
Injected in my veins. Every year in the preseason, we say the same thing in the NFL. The only thing that matters is coming out healthy. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of injuries, and that's not what's going to happen for a ton of stars. We'll tell you about it next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Ian Rappaport saying Packers quarterback Jordan Love tore a ligament in his left thumb, had a procedure to repair it. A little procedure. Shouldn't miss any regular season time after banging it on a helmet, taking a sack. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. All right, so let's look at some of the big injury news and notes across the league. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to figure out something, nothing, or everything. Is it a little deal? Is it a big deal? Or is it not a deal at all? Okay, Jordan Love to you. Something, nothing, or everything that he had a little procedure on his thumb, non-throwing hand.
I mean, anytime that you hear a quarterback undergoing a procedure in the month of August, it's something. Now, I don't think it is everything by all intents and purposes. Now, it wouldn't be the first time that a front office lied about anything, much less an injury to a starting quarterback. But by all intents and purposes, it does sound to be minor. It is his non-throwing hand. So I don't think that it is everything. It doesn't sound like Jordan Love is going to miss any sort of time in the regular season, so it can't be everything. But it is something. It's an injury to a quarterback. It's an off-season procedure. It's an off-season procedure to a hand. I don't care if it's your throwing hand or not. Your hand's pretty important when you're a football player, much less a quarterback. So it is something, and it is going to be time that he's going to be missing in the off-season. It's reps and it's opportunities to build chemistry on the field with his receivers and to continue to get better throughout the offseason. But look, Jordan Love is a pro. Jordan Love has at least enough experience under his belt that missing a week or two, reportedly the timeline for return for Jordan Love, he should be okay. So it's not panic time in Green Bay, though, Fitzy.
I also worry about taking the snap and handing the ball off. Little things that can happen. So I'll give it something. It's not a big deal, but it's something. All right, let's go to the next injury that is out there. Malik Neighbors, interestingly, hasn't practiced since August 6th at this point. A toe injury. He missed all the spring workouts. So at this point, something, nothing, everything from Malik Neighbors being injured.
Call me drama queen. I think it's everything. I think that this has the potential to be everything for the New York Giants. A toe and a receiver always gives me pause because we don't know exactly what it is, but a toe could be turf toe. And I know that turf toe might sound like a silly little injury. From every receiver that I've ever talked to that played time in the NFL, look, I know several of them have told me turf toe is the worst. It is a lingering injury. It's something that can keep you off the field for an extended period of time, and it is so incredibly painful. We don't know exactly that is what is going on with Malik Neighbors. I'm just saying it could be. It could be. So that makes me a little bit nervous. Malik Neighbors was able to have over 1,000 yards last season with a totally crap offense. What can Malik Neighbors do with an offense that's at least supposed to be a smidge better with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart? And I think it will be a matter of time until we do see Jackson Dart get some legitimate time and even starting time with the Giants. I think that a young quarterback's best friends are a reliable tight end, a veteran running back, and a go-to wide receiver. Look, no disrespect to Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt, but they're not Malik Neighbors.
Little disrespect. Little disrespect. I mean, it's just tiny.
They're not Malik Neighbors. I mean, right. Look, that bar is high. It's not like I'm saying, hey, they're not insert average receiver here. They're not Malik Neighbors, who I think has the ability to be a top 5 receiver in this league. Pay no attention to the helmet behind me. I promise. The purple and gold tinted glasses are squarely off. But I think this could be everything for this Giants offense, especially with a young quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's everything with the quarterbacks and with the quarterback development. What about Najee Harris? Najee Harris is back at Chargers practice. Let's remember that Najee injured himself in a fireworks incident, but he is back, participated in drills with the football for the first time since this training camp, off to the side. So something, nothing, or everything for Najee.
It's less of a something than Jordan Love, but more than nothing. And I think mostly because Najee Harris is stepping into a new team, a new scheme. He's getting acclimated with the Chargers, and the Chargers need to be better at running the football, Fitz, if they want to be a contender in the AFC, if they want to be kind of that 4th team in the AFC that everybody is talking about, especially in a stacked AFC West like we just touched on. So I think an upgraded run game is pivotal for this Chargers team. And again, Najee Harris, new to this offense, new to this team, new to this scheme. You're going to want to get those valuable offseason reps, and he hasn't been able to get those. So it's not a massive deal, but it's not nothing in my opinion.
I'll actually go everything. I think this is a big deal because as you see there is going to be a rotation of running backs. They have injuries on the offensive line. Now they're moving Joe Alt over to left tackle, which could make the right side of their line susceptible. You're going to need your running backs to be in rhythm from day one. And there are some nuances to how you run and how you see everything behind different line combinations. All of this to me really screams, especially in a Harbaugh offense that wants to be physical and just pound the rock. I think this is everything. They're going to need, look, Omarion Hampton's going to be the star there. Okay, we all acknowledge that. We acquiesce to that. Great. But you're going to need more than just Omarion Hampton if you really want to contend with the Chiefs. If it was just the Chargers kind of coming in and saying, let's have a cute season, then it's not a big deal. But this is a team that I think genuinely believes that they think they have a shot at the AFC West. You don't have a shot unless you get everything you can out of this running game, particularly behind that offensive line that's already dinged up and making some transitions. So I'll give it everything for Najee, mostly because I'm melodramatic.
Spicy.
I'm nothing if not spicy. Let's get one more in here. Christian Watson going to start on the pup. We talked earlier about the Packers. So, got a Packers wide receiver starting on the pup, which always sounds cute, but isn't physically unable to perform. Something, everything, nothing.
It is something, right? Whenever you don't have a guy like Christian Watson, who has been kind of a go-to guy for Jordan Love, especially Jordan Love now dealing with his injury. He's probably going to want to, as he's rehabbing and coming back from that ligament repair, He's going to want to have his go-to kind of reliable guys, receivers, running back, so on and so forth. It can't be everything, but possibly the Christian Watson injury combined with Jordan Love's injury. If we want to combine those two, is that everything?
I'll give you, yeah, you know what? You've talked me into it. I'll give you everything on that. You know,
I mean, I started as something, and now the more and more I talk about it, I'm like, wait, oh my gosh, no, maybe I am panicking in Green Bay.
Yeah, look, it's not nothing when it's your receiver and your quarterback together. Let's do one more receiver here. Rondale Moore, also, obviously, unfortunate for Rondale yet again. Injury cuts his season short. It's done. He injured his knee in the Vikings preseason, so he is out. Something, nothing, or everything.
I want to say it's not nothing, but it is kind of close to nothing as far as the Minnesota Vikings are concerned, because you still have Justin Jefferson, and of course Jordan Addison is going to be serving a suspension for violating the league's substance abuse policy. But Rondale Moore is not the focal point in that receiver room, so it's close to nothing. Still a something for the Vikings, but I think as far as Rondale Moore is concerned, this is everything. I mean, you suffer your second season-ending injury in consecutive seasons. I think it's fair to wonder, is Rondale Moore going to look at how much his body has just been beaten up by this game and say, I'm ready to step away?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'll be singing What Might Have Been every time. I really liked him coming out of college. He's just never been able to stay healthy. Okay, we got a lot to get into in hour number 2, including who's going to win the West. We'll figure it out. Yahoo Sports Daily. It's never too early for that second cup. Keep drinking your coffee. Keep your feet kicked up. It's Yahoo Sports Daily. Hour number 2, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. We are here for you and with you. Got a lot to get into this hour. But we'll start this hour like we start every single hour, Caroline, with 3 points. My voice is going to continue changing too. Go ahead and tell us what's on your mind.
Absolutely. Let's get it. The polar bear is now the king of Queens. Pete Alonso is now the New York Mets home run leader with 253 career dingers, and he surpassed Darryl Strawberry, who has worn the crown for almost 40 years. So shout out to our producer, Josh Golden, for not going to that game last night. Dropped the ball there. But he earned the record when he had a 2-run homer to right center field off of Spencer Strider in a 13-5 13-5 win over the Atlanta Braves. And it was even put up on the big screen last night at the game that they ran out of fireworks midway through the game because of all of the offensive fireworks that we saw from the Mets last night. So Alonso was under contract throughout the rest of the season, of course, but he has the ability to opt out of his 2-year, $54 million deal before the 2026 season. So the Mets have the opportunity to lock in their superstar or risk him walking and entering free agency. And by all reports, if the Mets don't sign Pete Alonso to a long-term deal, he is more than happy to walk into free agency. So here's my opinion. If you're the Mets front office, you just paid $700 million to Juan Soto. What's the point of paying Juan Soto all that money if you're not going to continue to spend money around him? Clearly, looking at where the Mets are right now, obviously they won last night, but it hasn't been great for the Mets over the last 10 to 12 games. So it's not enough as currently constructed. Why stop spending the money after spending all of that money and investing into Juan Soto, especially for a guy who is as beloved in New York as Pete Alonso himself?
Yeah, look, Alonso needs to be a Met. And by the way, his trajectory, he's going to end up with 500 home runs. He's going to go into Cooperstown as a Met. I just want all this to work out. Good congratulations, most importantly, to Pete Alonso for a huge hallmark moment in his career. I will give you the first point off my mind, and it's about gambling. Look, I don't know if you guys have seen this news, but it's important, okay? Ohio right now is making a move to limit player prop betting following an investigation into multiple Cleveland Guardians pitchers. So the governor of Ohio is coming in and saying, look, this is failing, and because there are multiple pitchers under investigation for prop bets, we should just eliminate the opportunity to do it at all. Now, why are they under investigation? Because guardrails exist. I hear you. I understand that gambling is an epidemic in this country at this point. It's something we're going to talk about later in the show. But let's be very clear. Multiple players being under investigation for prop bets and maybe fixing those prop bets shows you that guardrails are working. They are finding out when people violate these rules. At the end of the day, I'm not sure what you can do to take away everybody's opportunity to bet on games simply because some players are doing nefarious things. At the end of the day, the reason that there are drug tests is because you have to catch players when they are violating drug policies. The reason that there are steroid tests, even in WWE, is because you have to catch people that are violating. It is important that you catch the people that are violating any of the gambling rules as they sit in place. But the concept that you're going to come in and start to limit gambling opportunities to try and prevent this in your state specifically, it doesn't make any sense. We'll break down more of the gambling issue and more in-depth conversation later in the hour. But that, Caroline, takes us to our number one point, because we started the show today talking about how dashingly good-looking Travis Kelce is. There's no doubt about it, because that gets us into the AFC West. We've already talked about the Chiefs. We've talked about the Broncos. You've made it clear that the Chiefs and Broncos are your number one and number two teams. There are two other teams in the division, ma'am. And third up on our preview are the Los Angeles Chargers. Why do you hate the Chargers, Caroline?
Look, I don't hate the Chargers, and I feel like this animosity from you is coming from maybe where your fan base lies, Fitz, that I'm not maybe – it's not about the Chargers. I think it might be a little bit about the fact that I'm not giving enough love to your Raiders, perhaps. I don't know. Look, the Chargers absolutely can be in the conversation for the second best team in the AFC West. I lean the Broncos, but look, prove me wrong, Chargers. I think I just have trust issues with the Los Angeles Chargers, that every year I want to believe, every offseason it's like, okay, this is when Justin Herbert proves that he does belong in that elite quarterback conversation. And then they just don't. And then the Raiders, a little Freudian slip there. The Chargers just end up kind of stinking and not being that team that we expected them to be. But year two under Harbaugh, sure, absolutely, this team can take steps forward. The Rashawn Slater injury, though, gives me pause here. Nobody loves an offensive line more than Jim Harbaugh. I even remember before the 2024 NFL draft, the conversation was Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors. Where were the Chargers going to go? And look, the Chargers very famously didn't have enough skill position players. So I think a lot of people assumed that the Chargers would take Malik Neighbors out of LSU. But Jim Harbaugh got up in front of the media and said, I believe offensive linemen are skilled position players. I mean, Jim Harbaugh loves old school, run it down your throat, hard knocks, my fat guy versus your fat guy kind of football. So when you lose your bookend left tackle who just got signed to a massive deal, you have to swing Joe Alt over from right tackle to left tackle after you already switched him from left tackle to right tackle. Look, I'm not an offensive line genius, but I do know that it's not just an easy overnight fix to go from one side of the offensive line to the other. This team is built through the offensive line. So I think what the differentiation for me is between the Broncos and the Chargers right now is just the question mark surrounding the offensive line, Fitzy. But I do believe in Harbaugh. I do believe in Justin Herbert. I just worry that they don't have enough skill position players on top of Ladd McConkey to separate themselves from the rest of the AFC.
You know, one thing our mutual friend Mike Golick Jr. always taught me about offensive line is that once you start making a change, a shift, sometimes it's not just about the one shift you make, it's about the trickle-down effect of the rest of that shift. So moving Joe Alt over to left tackle makes me nervous because it exposes the right side of the line. They don't have any better chance or any better option, so they're doing what they have to do. I'm with you. I share concerns on the offensive line because of that injury. Now, I'm gonna qualify this statement, and I don't usually qualify anything I say, but one of the hard things frankly, about being a Raiders fan is that whenever I say anything about anybody else in the AFC West, people want to stack on that it's jaded by my fandom. So I will acknowledge quickly, loudly, that my favorite team stinks, all right? And my favorite team's quarterback situation for years has stunk. I have watched terrible quarterback after terrible quarterback. It's embarrassing sometimes to be a Raiders fan. Let me say that loudly and proudly so that I can now ask a very important Chargers question. Is there a modern quarterback that has gotten more benefit of the doubt than Justin Herbert? Like, somebody somewhere show me the landmark, oh my God, Justin Herbert victory that we are going to pin the flag down and say, this is why he's the guy. And it's hysterical to me because we work. I mean, the general football population just scrambles over themselves to tear down Lamar Jackson at every point because he hasn't won a playoff game the way he should, because the Ravens have underdone what their expectations are. We do this all the time with Lamar. We do this with almost every other quarterback in the world. But all we ever do is sit back and say, yeah, but with Justin Herbert, well, you know, he had the shoulder issue and that was a part of it. Okay, well, the coaching staff around him was incompetent. Okay, like we work so hard to make excuses for why Justin Herbert isn't who we thought Justin Herbert would be. I think part of this issue with the Chargers, part of the reason the Chargers are always expected to be great is we treat Justin Herbert like he is in the same category as Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, and he flat out isn't. He hasn't done anything. I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about actual results. He hasn't done anything to earn that same status in my mind. So to me, there are two, Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence are the two quarterbacks that we're constantly saying, no, this is the year they're going to do it. I'll believe Justin Herbert can win a massive playoff game or a playoff situation when I see him do it. And I haven't seen that yet.
I'll put Tua in that conversation as well. That I think that we always give the Dolphins the benefit of the doubt because Tua, but what has Tua done to deserve the benefit of the doubt? And I think that you're right, but I do feel like this offseason is different. And maybe previous off seasons we've talked about, okay, this is the year, this is the breakout year for Justin Herbert. I do feel like a general, population of football fans have now acknowledged, look, I will take a line from one of my favorite Hillary Duff movies, Cinderella Story. Wait. Are there multiple favorite Hillary Duff movies? Lizzie McGuire movie. Hello, classic.
I've never seen either of these movies. Go ahead. I'm as clueless to the work of Hillary Duff as you are to Razor Ramon, but go ahead.
You are also not a white woman in her 20s. I was raised by Hillary Duff. And if you did know and love Hillary Duff movies, I'd maybe be a little bit concerned. But there's a line in Cinderella Story, and she says, waiting for you is like waiting for rain in this drought. Useless and disappointing. That's kind of how it feels with Justin Herbert, right? Like waiting for Justin Herbert to have this breakout year to justify all of the conversation that we've had about Justin Herbert feels a little useless and it feels a little disappointing because I am now at the point where, look, I'll believe it when I see it. Justin Herbert is absolutely one of the 32 best quarterbacks in the National Football League. I would put Justin Herbert in the top half of starting quarterbacks in the National Football League. But he doesn't belong in the conversation with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. He doesn't belong in the same conversation as Joe Burrow. He still, I think, gives reason for optimism for the Chargers. But when we start to remove him from this, probably 10th to 16th conversation to 5th to 10th, like I can't put him in that conversation there because we have not seen it yet from him.
Yeah, to be clear, Justin Herbert is better than my favorite team's quarterback, and I still think he can be overhyped. Two things can be true at once. Speaking of my favorite team, let's get to my beloved Raiders, who we're speaking about fourth here. We'll get to our predictions in just a minute. This has been a strange offseason, and we've worked together for a long time. We've been friends for a long time. In our time together, I've always tried to be very measured as a Raiders fan. I usually think they're about a 6-win team, which means in the summer, Raiders fans crush me every year because I'm not high enough on the team. And then in the fall, Raiders fans crush me every year because I'm not as upset that the team isn't good. And to me, it all comes from where the expectation lies. That being said, this is a different moment for the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are going to turn around and win a ton of football games, but certainly I think what they did this year, they got an investment in new capital from new ownership that's minority ownership, not just Tom Brady. They bring in Tom Brady and they hire Pete Carroll. And this is where everybody tells me Pete Carroll is old. And I will just take this moment to remind you, as I've reminded you in the past, the last two people that we elected to run the United States of America, no matter what your political leanings were both older than Pete Carroll at the time of their election. If you can run the United States of America, you can probably run a football team. So I'm going to take the age and not worry about it for a minute. And I'm just going to sit here and say they needed to get an adult in the room. And what Pete Carroll has done is he's brought in an adult in the room. Is Geno Smith a world beater? I don't know. Is Pete Carroll going to turn around and win 12 games? No. But does this team feel like it's more pointed towards the path of being competent? Yes, and that I can't always say, Caroline.
This is the first Raiders offseason in a long time that I can say that makes sense. All of that makes sense. Now, what does that come to fruition in the win-loss column? I don't know. Could be 7-10 and you completely miss out on the playoffs. But I can at least say today on August 13th that it feels like every move the Raiders have made has been very calculated. Maybe that has something to do with whoever is counseling those who make those decisions in Tom Brady. Pretty smart football guy. But you bring in Pete Carroll, who has a very long history, obviously, as you have just stated, of coaching in this league. He knows how to rehabilitate a franchise who has been just in the depths and droves of the NFL for a very long time. You bring in Geno Smith. Is he a world beater? No. But is he a solid starting quarterback in the NFL? Yes, he is. You bring in Chip Kelly as your offensive coordinator. Nobody loves to run the football more than Chip Kelly does. Just watch that Ohio State-Michigan game from this past season. Chip Kelly, of course, the offensive coordinator of Ohio State last season. He almost likes to run the football a little bit too much. So you bring in an offensive coordinator who likes to run the football, and who do you draft in the first round? The best running back that we have seen in college football in 40 to 50 years in Ashton Genty. So these moves feel like they make sense. The moves feel like they are calculated. And if you are a Raiders fan, wouldn't you take that? Look, I'm not a Raiders fan, Fitz. You are, but wouldn't you take at least competence over the incompetence that we have seen for so long over the past couple of years with this Raiders organization?
Yeah, I think we need to see, the process get better, and that's what's happening. So let's get through our process of the AFC West. Let's get some predictions here. We're going to go on the record. We'll see at the end of the year how we did. All right, so let's say this. I think we both agree that the Raiders are the fourth best. I think countdowns, by the way, should always go 4-1. Like nobody ever wants to find out with a 1 first. So we all agree that the Raiders are the fourth best team in this division. Is that correct? Am I fair in saying that?
I would agree.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the Raiders are about a 7-win team. So I'm going to say, because I want to be wildly optimistic, I'm going to say 8-9 just because I want that in my heart. But 7-10 feels about right. That feels like the range for the Raiders.
7-10 feels right, and that's okay. 7-10, I think is okay.
So does that mean, who do you have in third?
I have the Chargers in third. It really is the Rashawn Slater injury gives me so much pause. I covered the Tennessee Titans for a very long time, and I saw firsthand how a horrific offensive line can completely uproot a team that went from the number one seed in the AFC to the number one overall pick in the span of 3 seasons. I know how important an offensive line is to a team. I know how important an offensive line is to this Chargers team. And an injury to your left tackle, you're moving your right tackle over to the left side. It's a lot of uprooting. It's a lot of change. I put the Chargers at 3.
Got a record prediction for me?
I will go, okay, so if the Raiders are 7-10 in 4th place in the AFC West, I'll go the Chargers are at a solid 9-8, just above 500.
This is amazing. This is the first time in my entire media career that I have not picked the Chargers to finish second in the AFC West. I'm done. I'm done doing it. I do it every year. I'm done doing it. So I'm going
He's
to
a
agree
new
with
man,
you.
ladies and
I'm a
gentlemen.
new man. 9-8 actually feels right. So I think the Chargers are the third best team at 9-8, which means I got to get to Denver as my second best team. And I think Denver ends up in about that 11-6 range. I think they're about an 11-win football team to me.
I was going to say 10-7, 11-6, right in that range. And when you look at their schedule, it really doesn't scare you. When they start the season with the Titans, that's a win. They go to Indianapolis, play the Colts. That's a win. They play the Jets and Giants in back-to-back games at home, both wins. The Raiders, sorry, Fitz. I think those are both wins. I think they sweep the Raiders. They play the Jags. I mean, they play the AFC South. Like those are all very manageable games. All those games, those teams right there that I just listed, that's automatically like 8 or 9 wins for the Broncos. And I think they can steal some of these games at Washington. I think they could steal that one at home against the Packers. I think that could be potentially a winnable game. Against the Bengals early in the season, we know how the Bengals struggle in September. So sure, I think that 10-7, 11-6 feels very doable in Bo Nix's second year.
Yeah, I got the Chiefs winning this division. I have Mahomes as the MVP of this
Hot
division
take.
again.
Wow.
And you know what? Chiefs are going to win 14 games this year, 14-3. How do you like that?
It's hard for me to disagree with you, right? I mean, we saw the Chiefs last year. I mean, obviously they went to the Super Bowl. They weren't a great team. Like they didn't do anything. They came down to the wire in how many of their games? Like it was 4th quarter comebacks or overtime comebacks in how many games? And they still pulled it out. So I'm not going to be one that picks against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I think 12-win floor for the Chiefs this year.
12 floor. I like that. Mahomes, the MVP of the division. We all agree on that.
But like, fine, I guess.
I mean, it's just gonna happen.
Like, I'm picking to be right, not to be cute. So I'm picking to be right than Patrick Mahomes. If I'm picking to be cute, I guess Bo Nix. But like, it's gonna be Patrick Mahomes.
By the way, one of our YouTube commenters asked if I'd be comfortable taking Ashton Genty. When we get back, let's talk about who I should take with the 7th overall pick in our draft, is what Christopher says there. 7th overall pick, Ashton Genty. I'm telling you, he's going to be an absolute rock star. He's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. He's going to have a wild year this year for the Raiders. Chip Kelly's going to run the ball. He's going to get a ton of touches. I love Ashton Genty in this. If
7th overall pick?
Yeah. Look, how rich would it be to pick Christian McCaffrey in his prime? The best of Christian McCaffrey. Would you take the best of Christian McCaffrey 7th overall? If you answer that question, yes.
7 times a week and twice on Sundays.
That's what Ashton Genty is going to be. I'm telling you, I got it. All right. We'll continue previewing divisions throughout the course of the entire week, obviously. But coming up, change is coming in Boston. Got Celtics fans really nervous. We'll tell you about it next. Breaking, Wyc Grousbeck will no longer remain Celtics governor following the team's $6.1 billion sale to Bill Chisholm. That's per Shams. Chisholm will take over. Originally, Grousbeck was going to hold the position through 2028. It's Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Some minutia here. It should be noted that this sale was approved, and it's been going through the channels. We're waiting for the league to approve it. You cannot be the front-facing governor of a team if you don't own enough of a percentage of it. He will not, and Wyc will no longer own enough of a percentage, so he simply cannot remain the front-facing moment of this. But this sets a little panic in for Celtics fans, Caroline, because they're looking around at a team that's had to offload some contracts. They're up against the apron. Everybody's talking about money. And it raises that question of, like, what's happening in Boston? Should they just sit this season out, basically tank and sort of reset the organization?
Yeah, and I think that this ownership move, it also has an effect on the Connecticut Sun and the WNBA. It was reported a couple of weeks ago that the Boston ownership group were interested in buying the Connecticut Sun and moving them to Boston, which was a move that the WNBA kind of put brakes on. But now, with a change in ownership, what does that mean for the WNBA? And of course, that's a secondary story as far as this move is concerned. But how I view the Boston Celtics at this point right now, just tank this season. What's the point of trying to win as many games as possible? I mean, the Celtics have already traded away Drew Holiday. They already traded away Kristaps Porzingis. They're taking a ton of money off of their books. Jason Tatum will be out for the entirety of the 2025-26 season. You are not going to be a good basketball team. So just go all in on being bad. As long as you have Jason Tatum, you're not going to be bad enough to be in the lottery conversation. You're not going to be bad enough to be picking top 5, top 10 in the NBA draft. So take advantage of this time that you have without Jason Tatum. Be bad. Tell your fan base, hey, look, we understand that if making some of these moves means that we're not going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but we're going to be better in 26 and 27 and beyond, then so be it. I know that it might feel like this team is getting burned at the stake in the city of Boston because that fan base just can't deal with being bad. But you're not going to be good anyway. So just go ahead and go all in on being bad, potentially put yourself into a lottery pick, and it'll be potentially in the mix for drafting a Massachusetts kid in AJ Dibansta. So why not? Like, you're going to be bad anyway. So just dive into the sea of suck.
I think the hard part about that is, possibly. Like, well, there was a 1.8% chance the Mavs were going to end up with the first overall pick, and that's what they got. So what do you get when you tank, and it's yeah, okay. Well, I mean, if the Mavs can fix the NBA, certainly the Celtics can.
Let me put my tinfoil hat on here and say maybe there was a little nefarious action going on behind that pick. And look, there's no guarantee that you're going to get the number 1 overall pick, but if you can be a lottery pick and then you get, a top 10 pick and you get Jason Tatum back for the 26-27 season, that's a refreshed perspective and refreshed optimism for this Celtics franchise.
I think the other hard part about this, though, is like at his core, Wyc has always been a governor that loved the Celtics. Like there are certain governors in the NBA that are more notorious for their fandom than anything. And Wyc's one of those guys. Like he loves this organization. And so when you have a new ownership group come in, and there's this concern, particularly in modern sports, about venture capitalist owners that may or may not even like the team, they're just trying to make a bunch of money. Can you tank and still send the right message to your fan base? Look, it's not the new ownership's fault that they're up against the apron and making some of these transactions. I believe that would have happened either way. But it is also important context that if you come in as a new ownership group, most of the time, what do we see? Like when the Suns were sold, all of a sudden aggressive moves were made. Why? Because their new ownership group wanted to show everybody, we want to win championships. Now they've had to dismantle all that. It didn't work, but they still want to make that statement. What happens in the first 18 months of a new ownership group, I believe, really sets the overall tone of what fans expect for forever from that ownership group. If you come out and you tear apart the Celtics and you trust the process, Boston, man, I think you lose the city, you lose the NBA, you lose respect. You'll get crushed on every show. Like from ours to Bill Simmons, you'll get crushed 24/7. That just takes a level of, man, you got to be able to shut off the noise and just do the damn thing that I don't know many people can do. And I don't think it's worth the culture problem that can be created from it just because you get the higher draft pick. If I'm the Celtics, I'm going out and saying, hey, we're going to figure out how to win as many games as we can this year with Tatum. Tatum's going to be back, and when he's back, we're going to be just fine, and we're going to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the East. But I don't think tanking long-term actually helps them get to that goal, even though it feels like it does from the lottery portion of it.
Look, they would get torn apart by shows like ours, and especially local shows in Boston. I mean, I have local shows in Boston.
EEI would crush them all day.
Oh, I mean, I would want to go to Boston just for funsies, just to pop in to see what the local conversation was. But who cares? Like, who cares if you are getting torn apart by talk shows? Look, I love our talk show very much, but if general managers and owners across America are listening to our show for advice, well, then they're not very good at their job, and they're probably not going to keep their job for very long. It's one season after basically an entirety of the franchise being an excellent team in the NBA. You just won the NBA Finals 2 years ago. You can take 1 year of taking a few steps back with the idea of taking leaps and bounds forward over the next few years. You extend your window with younger players. I mean, I'll take a few months of being torn apart by talk shows in order to be a championship contender for years to come.
We'll keep you updated as the deal is hopefully going to be completed in the next week for the Celtics. Also, with the Round Ball Roundup, some WNBA news and notes from last night. The Wings get a dramatic win over Indiana, which was a fourth quarter comeback, was absolutely one for the ages. Should give Indiana a little bit of credit here, though, as they pointed out on the broadcast smartly last night. The Fever have managed to maintain without Caitlin Clark for a very long time. Nobody knows when Caitlin's going to be back, but huge moment for them as an organization to be able to continue to fight through this, but also a big win for Dallas.
Massive win for Dallas, a team that really struggled at the beginning of the season. They said, we're okay with struggling because we know in the long term with Paige Beckers, we're going to be fine. She just needs to figure herself out. This team needs to click. But as far as the Fever is concerned, we need to give them a whole lot of credit. And I even talked about Stephanie White as coach of the year, being able to stay a playoff contender and to stay in a playoff spot even without their certified superstar. But there's only so much that any team can endure. Sydney Colson and Arian McDonald are both out for the rest of the season. They both suffered season-ending injuries last week. The Fever don't have a single healthy point guard. So you can continue to win without Caitlin Clark, but the more and more the injury bug bites, the less and less you're going to be able to stick to your winning ways. And I think that's what we're starting to see with the Fever here. But I don't want to take anything away from the Dallas Wings. A massive win last night, being able to hold off a fourth quarter comeback, 22 points for Maddie Siegrist, 16 for Paige Beckers. This team is showing that it will be good in the long run with their win last night.
And a shout out, good right now. The Lynx clinched the WNBA playoff berth. Congratulations. The Lynx become the first team to clinch a WNBA playoff spot. We'll keep you updated on all of it, of course. But Aaron Rodgers is out here yelling and screaming about fashion. Well, not quite, but we'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Aaron Rodgers is still hunting for a new helmet. He doesn't like the new helmets, says it looks like a damn spaceship, doesn't fit. Remember, helmet safety is an initiative by the NFL to try and help player safety, but that means certain helmets are approved and certain helmets aren't. That one looks like a spaceship. Yahoo Sports Daily. And it is a little big. I mean, Caroline, it is a little big on his head, in fairness.
I was going to say he looks like a little kid putting on like his dad's old helmet that he found in the old, the memory box from high school. It does look pretty massive. He is making quite the dramatic face though, putting it on. It's not that bad. Like, yes, it's big, but it's like the drama from Aaron Rodgers. It's always drama with Aaron Rodgers. Just shut up. It's like, shut up. You always have to have a comment about everything. I'm so over Aaron Rodgers and just his talking always, all the time.
It's hysterical to me because, again, these are league-wide mandates on helmets. So every single player on every single roster right now through training camp is using an approved helmet. And we're only hearing one player complain about it, as always. And the hard part about it is Aaron says that we criticize everything he says and he just wants to be left alone. You can't really say that you want to be left alone, you don't want to talk, and then show up on Pat McAfee's show every week. Like, that just doesn't, the two sides don't align. And so, when Aaron speaks about these things, of course, it becomes a headline.
And didn't he have a documentary crew following around his every single move not that long ago? Like, you want to be left alone, yet you want to be, he's like Tinkerbell. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't get the spotlight, he will die. Yet he wants to be left alone. And I do think, I understand, a new equipment, it changes what you've been doing for the last 20 plus years. It's something you have to get used to. I do totally understand that. But read the room. The NFL has made such a push and has had such a massive focus on specifically head safety. That's unfortunately, CTE has been directly linked to the game of football, that we've had, new concussion protocols, that the league and individual teams, very rightfully so, are taking head safety and concussion protocol very, very seriously. So if you don't like the helmets, look, Aaron, I get it, but read the room. The league is trying to do at least something to eliminate concussions and the long-term effects of concussions and head injuries. Just don't say anything at all. You don't need to say anything publicly, because as much as he says, leave me alone, he continues to be the one, not us. Aaron continues to be the one that butts himself into the headlines.
Look, you ever want to have a drinking game early in the morning, take a shot every time I talk about the fact that things are collectively bargained, because it's something I stand on all the time. Whatever the issue is with the helmets was collectively bargained between the team, the league, the owners, and the Players Association. So if you don't like the helmets, you have a players rep on the Steelers that you can go to and say, hey, I'd like for the union to look at this. And then they'll go to all, 2,000 members of the union, and they'll decide if it's worth actually dying on that hill. Like, there's an actual process that exists. But this just brings back the constant thing for me, which is any of this really worth it? This is the question that I asked when the Jets acquired Aaron Rodgers. What level of winning will it take to make the soap opera of Aaron Rodgers worth it? And the answer for the Jets was, you never really got any of it, so you don't know. I guess I'd ask the same question. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, and for everything that's going on there, is Aaron Rodgers on the field still going to be so dynamic that it's worth everything else? I just don't know that we see that clearly. I don't know that there's an answer here that tells us that Aaron Rodgers is still a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And if you're not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, then man, just stop. This is a level of attention that you can get away with demanding when you are one of the main focuses of the league from your play. Aaron Rodgers isn't that guy anymore. It's fine. He's fine. He's not terrible. He's not him anymore.
He's definitely not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. It's a far cry from the top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I think the Steelers are just hoping, can we get 75% of back-to-back league MVP Aaron Rodgers? Can we live with that? I will give the Steelers credit that they did something very un-Steeler-like this past offseason. The Steelers don't go after an aging quarterback and sign him to a 1-year deal. The Steelers don't swap old players for more old players that don't really make an impact on your team. It's very un-Steeler-esque, but they at least did something different. I mean, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. That's what we got from the Steelers for a very long time. They did the same kind of things. They ran their team the same kind of way. They would squeak into the playoffs and they would lose in the wild card round year over year over year. I do understand there's a lot of franchises, I think the franchises that we are fans of, Fitzy, where the fans would die to just get into the playoffs and lose in the wild card round. They'd be fine with that. But when you get the same thing over and over again after a certain period of time, ownership, fan bases, they get tired of the same thing over and over again. So I will give the Steelers credit for doing something different. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was the right thing or that it will pay off, but at least they did something different. I am opening the door, though, Fitz, that Aaron Rodgers might not be terrible. Like, he threw for almost 4,000 yards last year. You could say, well, the Jets were terrible and they constantly had to throw because they were constantly playing from behind. I do understand that. But I do think that there is a world where Aaron Rodgers still can be 75% of who he was when he was an MVP. And maybe that is good enough to win enough games to make the playoffs and even win a playoff game. I'm not going to put my money on it, but I do think that there's a realm of possibility where that exists.
I would argue that he has lesser weapons in Pittsburgh and a lesser defense in Pittsburgh, and that Jets team still didn't win a lot of games. And yeah, he threw for some
yards. I won't say lesser
but
defense in Pittsburgh.
I think the Jets defense last year was look, the Pittsburgh defense is still very good, but the Jets defense last year was supposed to be great. Like, it was supposed to be world-beating defense. Remember, like, that's a defense that with Zach Wilson at the quarterback, man, they were still in games and the defense was getting frustrated. I think the Jets have the talent to be one of the better defenses in the NFL. So, you know, it's not that the Steelers defense is bad by any means. I just think the Jets defense is better. And I would take the combination of Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams last year over anything that the Steelers are going to put out. No offense to DK Metcalf. So, like, I hear you that, you know, look, the yardage was there, but when we were watching the games, it didn't look like the Aaron Rodgers of old. Consistently, it didn't look like the Aaron Rodgers of old. And there were some games where there were really bad, poorly timed throws, some stupid picks, just those things. I genuinely don't believe right now that the wins above replacement. Like, I think the Steelers are always going to be a playoff team. So they're always going to be a 9-win team. So instead, they go out and they get Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Aaron Rodgers is going to win them what? One more game than Mason Rudolph would have? Though they'll be a 10-win team, maybe, but they didn't solve their long-term quarterback issue, so they're going to have to go through this every year. And they still didn't put themselves in anywhere near the same trajectory as the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Ravens. So what you did is you picked up somebody that is going to just always be in the news, and you're always going to have to answer to, which coaches, particularly Tomlin, have liked to keep out of the limelight. Think of the distractions within the Steelers organization and how quiet they were when they were Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like, that's the way Tomlin does business. You can't do that business anymore with Aaron Rodgers that way. So you get a quarterback that is on the wrong side of the age bracket, no matter how we want to look at. The only other quarterback that's ever really been successful to this level, what we got, Brady? Like, that's what we're putting on him. Maybe if you want to buy the 1 year of Favre. So you got a 40-year-old quarterback that's declining, that is not who he used to be, that might be a little bit better than Mason Rudolph was, and doesn't solve your long-term answer. I think that at the end of the day, the Steelers are going to be who they always are, a mid-team that's like, not good enough to contend, and still not in any position to get quarterback next year. They're going to be doing this whole thing again.
They're definitely not good enough to contend. You have to get past Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in order to contend, and I don't think the Steelers are in their place to do that. But are they good enough to win a playoff game? Like, I think that probably is what the goal of this Pittsburgh Steelers team is this year. Win a playoff game. They haven't done that. How long? It's been what? How long since they won a playoff game?
If I'm taking quarterback v. quarterback in a playoff game, Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes. Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, like, all of these are Justin Herbert, I just said earlier, hasn't won a big game. I don't know, but like, I don't feel any worse about Justin Herbert than I do at this point about where the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers are. Like, realistically, I hear you, but the Steelers at best, the Steelers have the third best quarterback in their own division. Like, they're not even in the conference. At best, they have the third best quarterback in their own division this year.
Which is, you know, a division that has Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson.
But that's what it
But
has.
still, but I don't think anybody in Pittsburgh is expecting Aaron Rodgers to be better than Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. That's the thing, is I don't think that the Pittsburgh Steelers made the decision to go after Aaron Rodgers because they're saying, we're going to win the Super Bowl. Of course not. Why would you pick up a 41-year-old quarterback that is not the same guy that he used to be, that is just 2 years removed from an Achilles injury at 41 years old because you're trying to win a Super Bowl? Look, I don't know what the goals of the Steelers franchise are long term, but right now they're just kind of sticking in the mucky middle. They're consistently a 9-8 football team that gets into the playoffs and doesn't do anything in the playoffs. That gets frustrating, right? But I think the Steelers can hang their hat on, we're always consistently making the playoffs. That's what their plan is this year, I think. Let's get in the playoffs. Let's try to win a playoff game with a guy who knows how to win playoff games. It's a much different conversation of what's the Steelers' plan in 2026 and beyond.
A good organization.
Because frankly, I have no freaking clue what their plan is in 2026.
Good organizations make those plans. And I will say this loudly. When this gets clipped off in social media and people start commenting on it, no team is going to start hotter than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look at their schedule. No team is going to fall off the cliff more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are going to start with a hot run, and then they are just going to fizzle out through the end of the year. And we're all going to overreact to both sides. When the reality is right now, today, we have the best sense of who they are. They're a 9-win football team. Okay. One thing I know is that we'll talk about the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers constantly because they'll always give us things to talk about. We'll get you caught up on some of the news that you've missed while the show was going on. Plus, gambling and the impact it's having on sports right now. We'll tell you about it next. Welcome back to Yahoo Sports Daily. Breaking news. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones says he survived a stage 4 cancer battle that lasted more than a decade and included 4 surgeries. The story's out there right now on Yahoo, and Frank Schwab has written it. Should be of note that the initial diagnosis came in 2010. Over the next 10 years, he had 4 surgeries, 2 on his lungs, 2 on his lymph nodes. He credited the experimental drug PD-1 for his recovery. Quote, I was saved by a fabulous treatment and great doctors and a real miracle called PD-1. This reminds us, Caroline, that there are things outside of just football in everybody's life, including Jerry Jones. And sometimes knowing that he was dealing with this from 2010 to 2020 is a reminder that we don't always have that full context of what's going on in people's lives while we talk about the sports that they're involved in.
I think it's a reminder too that these are all humans. These are people. And unfortunately, cancer does not discriminate and it can hit anyone, whether it's, just a regular person walking down the street or it's Jerry Jones. So thoughts and prayers to Jerry Jones and his family, and shout out to the miracle workers, truly all doctors across the globe that work to save lives like Jerry Jones. He said that he is currently tumor free. So at least good news there, but thoughts and prayers to his family. Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've also got breaking news for college football on a much less serious note, but something we want to get you updated on, and it comes from the University of Kansas. Kansas Athletics have gotten a $300 million donation from David Booth. So that's a massive, massive donation for them, believed to be among the largest single gifts in the history of college athletics. And huge. Lance Leipold, in full disclosure, is a close friend of mine, the head coach of University of Kansas football. To watch the transformation that program has gone through under somebody that I just consider to be a great man is really incredible. There is a moment where Kansas football was wildly irrelevant, and there were questions about whether or not they should even play games, Caroline. And now, not only have they become a contender, an annual contender, this donation is going to set them up to begin to continue that next step.
100%. We had Andy Staples on the show yesterday, which of course you could find on the Yahoo Sports YouTube page. And we talked about, in 2021, when NIL became legalized, there was so much fear about, well, the big are only going to get bigger. The Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Texases that have so much money, they're only going to get better. And Andy Staples said, well, those people are idiots because that's not how that works. And we have schools like Kansas that don't really have any sort of history, are not a very strong program. They're a blue blood basketball program. They're not a football school. We have schools like Kansas that have very wealthy and dedicated alumni like David Booth here. And I don't even know who David Booth is. Looks like he's
an American businessman. Yes.
Oh, American businessman. Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. That is detailed. But I just looked him up. It says he has a net worth of $2 billion. Don't we all? That would be great. But we now have programs like Kansas that have wealthy and passionate alumni that say, hey, I want my team to be good. And money doesn't necessarily equal championships. I think we have several examples of that. But Ohio State invested $30 million into their roster last year, and they did what? They won a national championship. So money can equal success in college football. So good for Kansas. With $300 million worth of playing money. I don't even know what I would do with that. Some fun money there, but good for Kansas. And in a Big 12 with Texas Tech, it has said we have zero price tag. Give us all the money that you possibly can. And for a school like Colorado that has been resurrected in the NIL era, that conference all of a sudden just got really, really interesting.
Yeah, by the way, it's been pointed out, Mike Goldfarb, our great producer, got us this nugget. He's the chairman of Dimensional Fund Advisors. So there we go. Chairman of Dimensional Fund Advisors. Most importantly, I hope Coach Leipold gets a raise. Just because you bring on $300 million in, you should get a raise. There we go. Speaking of regulations and the wild, wild west, which is college football, that is also the way that we view gambling right now. And it's funny because Michael Porter Jr., on a podcast was talking about sports gambling, and he said, you can get rich. You can get your homies rich by telling them, hey, bet 10K on my under. And you couple this with the fact is, as we told you earlier, the governor of Ohio is trying to push through legislation that will get rid of prop bets that individual athletes have control over. That in reaction to two different Cleveland Guardians pitchers that are being investigated for possible gambling allegations. It just speaks, though, Caroline, to the fact that right now, one of the biggest disconnects to me is the lack of understanding from athletes on the fact that they're going to get caught. Like, there are simple regulations that exist at every sports book. And if unusual bets come in on one player's under directly before a game, the first thing that they do is flag it, and then it gets investigated. Like, I need to remind everybody that part of the reason we keep seeing all of these instances of athletes being investigated and caught is because the guardrails are working. Like, this is the way the system is supposed to work to catch the people that are doing it. And it's alarming to me that Michael Porter Jr. would sit there and think even that he can say that and that people wouldn't catch it being done.
Yeah, Michael Porter Jr., maybe just don't say that. Maybe just don't say in detail of what you would do to get you and your friends rich, essentially by rigging a game. Maybe don't say that in public on a podcast. I don't know, just a crazy little thought there. I'm a college baseball nerd, and I'll go back to the 2022 college baseball season. Brad Bohannon was the head coach of Alabama baseball. They were playing LSU. Now, LSU went on to win the national championship that year. That was when Paul Skeens was pitching at LSU. He was their Friday night starter. Alabama's Friday night game, like an hour before first pitch, Brad Bohannon told him, hey, you're not playing, and we're going to play this guy who hasn't started a single game all season long. That's a little fishy, right? You're going up against the number one team in the country, hands down the best pitcher in college baseball, and you sit your ace in favor of a guy who hasn't started? Weird. It came out that Brad Bohannon was on the phone with a friend at a Cincinnati sports book saying, I'm, put all of this money, like tens of thousands of dollars on LSU to win that Friday night game. And there was this guy, his friend in the sports book, who was going around to the people that work at the sports book and at the casino and saying, if you knew what I knew, you'd put this much money on that game too. How stupid can you be? Don't you think that it is very, very obvious, not just what the coach was doing, but the amount of money put on LSU to win that game just before game time, before the pitching swap was even announced, that there was going to be maybe some red flags there, maybe some targets put on your back there? Sports books are smart, casinos are smart, and they don't want to lose money. So if they feel like there is any sort of nefarious activity going on, they're going to flag it. And we've seen it. We saw Calvin Ridley get flagged for sports gambling. Several players in the NFL get flagged for sports gambling. They're serious about this. The leagues are serious about this. The leagues are terrified of potentially fixed or rigged games coming to light in their leagues. They don't want that to happen. Sportsbooks don't want to lose money. Nobody wants the integrity of their business to be compromised. So I hear people saying, well, we need sports gambling, to be taken away completely. Well, do we need prohibition, or do we just need people to follow guardrails? Because so far, Fitz, I think the guardrails are working. Just follow the rules.
I always go back to, I grew up in Las Vegas as a little kid, and my parents both worked in casinos, were casino managers at one point. And when we moved from Vegas to the East Coast, my friends as a kid would walk up and they would all start talking about how casinos were rigged. And this was, post mob, obviously. And like everybody,
Right.
But there was this mentality of like, oh no, weighted balls, like all the games are fixed. And I remember my mom wildly, just very bluntly explaining to a friend's family, look, two things. One, it's so wildly regulated that nobody would ever do anything to try and work around it. It's just not worth the risk. And two, my mom said very smartly, also, casinos don't need to rig anything because people are stupid. And my mom always preached that. Like, people are stupid. And her whole point was, whatever you win, you'll eventually give back because you lack self-control. And that's what casinos bank on. I don't think gambling is really any different. Like, they don't need to sit here and put massive guardrails in place because of athletes. Realistically, all everybody's trusting in this situation is that most of you are going to win a massive parlay at some point this year. And when you win that parlay, you're going to show all of your friends the $150 you won on that $5 play. You're not going to show your friends the other 200 parlays you played that all lost you money this season. Like, that's the way the world works. So I continually look at this and say, hey, we need to make sure that the leagues are on the up and up. We need to make sure the athletes are on the up and up. And there are regulators and regulations in place that literally do that. But if we're sitting here saying we're going to take away everybody else's right to gamble, I think what you're losing in that process is that part of the reason your sport has become so popular, all sports, is because people gamble on it. Like, it is a real conversation, Caroline, of, hey, you want to ride this with me? I'm taking LSU in this game. Who's riding with me? You start taking away the ability to do some of that, you will see a decline in popularity of sports. Gambling is directly related to why we pay so much attention.
I think it's another reason why the WNBA has been so incredibly popular. And credit to the league and credit to Caitlin Clark. Of course, those are all factors, but betting creates intrigue that may not already be there. If I bet on a game, I'm going to be watching it. If I bet on a Montana Central Michigan game, I'll turn that one on, which normally I wouldn't care about that at all. There are a lot of vices that exist in the world, right? I don't blame alcohol distributors for alcoholism. I don't blame Apple for iPhone addictions. I can't blame sports books and casinos for gambling addictions. I can blame individual people for not following the rules or not having discipline. Let's not directly, attack the source of it. Let's identify individual cases where people are not responsibly engaging in those vices.
Weirdly, I would be more worried about gambling in sports if we weren't catching athletes doing it. At some point, they're doing it. If you're not catching them, then that means the right things aren't being done. But the fact that we continually find people that are being punished tells me that the right things are happening. And in that mindset, we don't need to take away everybody's opportunity to do it simply to protect ourselves from a few bad apples standing on the mound for the Cleveland Guardians. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp Eastern time. Thanks so much for hanging out with Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We appreciate you.